Howdy there, young and Silver Mongoose here, back again for another kind of off-the-cuff video. I made a few notes, but I've found myself more and more attracted lately to videos where they're much more like videos from like 2010 or something. So like Murugaru553's channel, John Hancock started posting a lot of videos on his channel as well. And content like that, where it's just a guy in front of a camera just chatting or just showing something really quickly, not a lot of special effects or editing or anything like that. And I've just found myself more and more attracted to things like that, response videos, etc., etc. And there was a video that Murugaru553 Taylor made in response to a video of Johnny Happy Console Gamer. This video is supposed to talk about, this response video is supposed to talk about RPGs that you tried to like. And as I watched Taylor's video and John's video, there were a few things that definitely came to mind. So I wrote a few of them down really quickly. And again, these games aren't necessarily ones that I hated, just ones that I tried to like, and I couldn't get into it as much as I wanted to. The first one, I guess we'll go back to the first one that I played in the series of 4 games. And the first one is Lunar on the Sega CD. So this is the original version. I know this game's been remade, 20 times probably on a lot of systems. A lot of people, the first one they played was on the PlayStation 1, I believe. And that game is upgraded, etc. So when I'm talking about this one, I'm talking about the original. And you know what? This is probably the game on this list that I dislike the most. I know a lot of people praise this game. A lot of really big fans that own all the reiterations. But I had a lot of problems with it. Part of it was, in some ways, it was very basic. What I mean is, and I don't have my copy here, but they didn't tell you what a lot of things did. There wasn't a lot of space to manage your items. And they didn't tell you what the items did. You look in the manual, it doesn't even tell you what the items did. So you have to try your items out. And like I said, the item management was kind of difficult because the space was very tiny. And that was a little bit annoying. And I remember one part that really bothered me was I ended up upgrading this character, giving him all new items and new armor, new weapons, etc. And then the next scene, he just leaves. And he takes all the items and everything with him, and you never see him again. And that was pretty frustrating. I just spent all my money, trying to make this guy great. And the other thing was, I thought the game was pretty boring in some respects. Visually, it's not a very pretty game. It's pretty blah. And it's not really an excuse that it's on a Sega system. There are a lot of very beautiful, very bright colored games on the Genesis and on the Sega CD. But this one I thought was quite dull. The caves were ridiculously boring, and I thought the music too was very unremarkable. I listened to the soundtrack years later, and I can hardly remember any single song from that whole game. The fact that it was on a CD was great in the sense that it provided you with a high quality in terms of audio quality soundtrack, but the technology wasn't really there, so a song would end, and then it would pause for 1 or 2 seconds while it reloaded the song, and then go again. So it wasn't continuous. All these things together just kind of made it boring, and I eventually was so bored that I was just playing with my feet. I had the Genesis controller on the ground, and I was using my feet. And the Genesis, by the way, is a great controller for playing with your feet. 3 really large buttons and a really large D-pad. But once I was done with that game, I didn't really feel the need to ever play it again. There was a few things that I did like about it. I did like the opening cutscene. Has a great song. It's like so early 90s, late 80s, kind of with the anime graphics, which I know at the time was a really big deal. And also they were really primitive cutscenes, which again, at the time must have been amazing. But I played this game maybe 2005 maybe, sometime around there, 2005, 2007, and it just wasn't doing it for me. And some people might think, well, this is just how a lot of old RPGs are. Well, not necessarily. I've played old RPGs since, like Phantasy Star, Wizardry 4, a lot of older RPGs, Dragon Warrior even, super basic. I even liked that more. I didn't find those games boring, but Lunar, I just found really boring. So the next game was Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest 7 on the PlayStation 1. I had a friend who just adored this game, and for years they wanted me to play it. They said, "Oh, Dragon Warrior is the greatest. This is the greatest game ever," and they wanted me to play it. And first off, I knew how long this game was because I'd seen them play it for many, many hours. This is easily a 100-plus hour game. But also, the game took super long to start. You know, it's hours before anything even happens. Anything at all that is even remotely interesting. And I found the soundtrack very somber. Like, the whole game, from all the parts that I saw and the parts that I played maybe 5 hours into it, I found the whole thing melancholy, I guess. Melancholy or somber. It just kind of got me down while I played. And some of the songs are very beautiful, but for the most part, I found the whole thing kind of depressing, and I fell asleep a few times. It took me a few times of falling asleep to actually finish the first few hours of the game. And I would like to actually retry the remake when it comes out on 3DS in North America. It does look like they've made a lot of improvements. So the next one that I played was Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door on GameCube. Now, the original Paper Mario was a game that people are really on the fence on, you know, the Mario and Luigi series, the Paper Mario series, Mario RPG. A lot of these games, some people love and some people hate. So usually the people who are hardcore RPG fans really don't like them because they're really simple. But the original Paper Mario on the N64, my family and I played so much that we broke the cartridge. Just from as soon as a copy file was done, we started another one because we loved it that much, and we loved the world and the graphics and the humor and the music, everything about it. Yeah, it was basic and simple, but it was fun, right? And that's, you know, what else can you ask for? You know, I liked the secrets and the characters. I liked everything about it. And then when I went to go play Paper Mario, the Thousand Year Door on GameCube, I thought, all right, more of this. But I thought, like, the hub world was like a port with, like, you know, it was just kind of dirty and brown. And the whole world didn't really compare in my eyes to the world that they created in the original Paper Mario. The characters also were kind of derivative, I guess is the way to say it. Like in these games, you have Mario as the main character, and you have a secondary character which you can rotate through. And in the first game, you had, you know, a Goomba, and you had a Ghost, and you had a Paracoopa, and you had a Koopa Troopa. And the characters in the second one, in Thousand Year Door, were very, very, very similar. You know, you even get them in basically the same order. First you get the Goomba, then you get this, then you get that. And there's tons of characters for you to choose from in the Mario world, and even if they would have chosen the same characters, they weren't different enough in my eyes. I didn't think the humor was as good. I thought maybe it was a little bit too long. There were some parts that I really liked. I really liked the part where Mario becomes a wrestler and enters like a wrestling competition and has to beat up people. And, you know, there's a lot of things I did like about the game, but in the end, in my eyes, it didn't compare to the original that I loved so much. And there was another thing, too, I really didn't like that one of the DS Zelda games did as well, is that you go to like a dungeon or a cave or something, and then you go out, you collect something, you come back, you go a little bit deeper. You go, you collect something, you go back, you go a little bit deeper in the dungeon. And I found it really monotonous, really boring. It wasn't really interesting at all. Alright, so here's the last one, and I guess the oldest one is the original Final Fantasy for the NES. I was really excited to play this game. I had played some side series to Final Fantasy over the years. You know, the Crystal Chronicles series I really like, and I've played, you know, Tactics Advance. I dabbled really minorly in the original Final Fantasy as a kid, and also I played the PC demo of Final Fantasy VII way back in the day. But overall, I kind of just didn't get into Final Fantasy. I had a lot of friends that loved it, and obviously, you know, being in the YouTube gaming community, there's a lot of really big fans of Final Fantasy. So I thought, you know what, I want to play it in a more traditional way. I kind of try to play games as traditionally as possible. So, you know, when I played Phantasy Star, I didn't look up anything. I drew out maps on a grid, and I try to play it like somebody would back in the day. So whenever I got the original Final Fantasy, you know, I got the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide. This is issue 17 of Nintendo Power, I think. And it's basically just, you know, like a player's guide, has maps and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't look up anything. I occasionally would talk to friends or people who've played it before to get kind of some hints from them. But for the most part, I just played it, you know, blind. And I quickly learned that this game has a lot of problems. And these are problems that are undeniable. They're glitches. There's a whole, you know, wiki on the problems in this game. Like, I don't remember a lot of them specifically, but you'll have one like, it'll say like, oh, this weapon is +5 against ogres. Alright, you're great. You get the ogre's knife and you want to fight ogres. Well, it turns out it doesn't actually do that. There's tons of weapons that don't do what they say they're going to do. There's spells that don't do anything or do the opposite, like Blind, I think, is supposed to make enemies' accuracy go down. It actually increases the enemy's accuracy. There are some spells like one of the heal spells. I think Heal 2 is actually as strong as Heal 3, but only when you're in battle. There's so many glitches in this game, you know. I think critical hits are done incorrectly. People's speed is done incorrectly. It's just full of glitches. And what's frustrating is that, you know, you're using the guide, and the guide obviously doesn't mention any of these glitches, either because they didn't know, or they were covering up the fact that the game was full of a bunch of glitches. But it kind of frustrates you, you know. You save up to buy this weapon or work towards this spell or get a character that's supposed to be a certain way, and it doesn't do any of those things. So, understandably, that's very frustrating. And those are kind of undeniable facts that, you know, you can't argue to say that those glitches are a good thing. They were mistakes, they were glitches. And if I would have played one of, you know, the 20 remakes of Final Fantasy 1, maybe those things are fixed, but in the original one, they're not fixed, and they led to some very frustrating parts. Other than that, I pretty much like the game, but that kind of dragged it down for me. It was frustrating. And one thing I kind of found frustrating as well was the leveling up system. I found was a lot more random than in other games. So a lot of RPGs, you know, when you level up, you may, you know, you gain a certain amount of health, a certain amount of attack, etc. And if you're a fighter, for example, you'll gain more health and more attack and more defense. You won't gain any magic, kind of thing. Or if you do gain magic, it's going to be really low amounts of magic. And that makes perfect sense. Some are a bit more random, so it's kind of like playing a tabletop RPG, like when you play Dungeons & Dragons, you roll a dice when you level up, that kind of thing. Makes perfect sense. But I found Final Fantasy was more random. And I noticed this by I would be leveling up, and then I would die, and then level up again, and I noticed that my characters were very different, to the point where I would have a character that was supposed to be physically weak, and they would have as much health and defense as my fighter, who's supposed to be physically strong, and that's just because it was random. So you may gain 5 health when you gain 1 level, and then you die, and then you gain that level again, and you gain 0 health. And then the next level you gain 0 health. The next level you gain 0 health. And the next one you may gain 1. And all your other characters are gaining like 5 every time, and it's frustrating because your characters don't build or progress as you expect. But overall, I liked most of the game, but I found it very frustrating. And hopefully there's not as many glitches in the later Final Fantasy games. I'm going to be playing them in North American release order. So I'm still looking forward to playing that. All of these games, I would definitely give another shot many years down the road, because some games like Final Fantasy or Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, I just played a couple of years ago. But yeah, Dragon Warrior 7, Dragon Quest 7, Lunar on the Sega CD, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, and Final Fantasy, the original on the NES. Were 4 RPGs that I really tried, I really wanted to like, but in the end, not really my cup of tea. So it would be awesome if someone else did, you know, another response video to this. And as you can see, it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to have background videos and stuff, which I may edit in, but it doesn't have to be fancy. You can just sit in front of a camera, even, you know, use your phone, and just record, you know, 5 minutes of you yammering on, and let me know, and I'll watch it, and I'll comment, and yeah. Also, you might want to watch Taylor's video or Happy Console Gamer's video on the matter, and yeah, I really miss response videos and little kind of fun things like this from the original days of YouTube. So, yep, that's all I got to say. This has been SilverMongooseVideos, a member of Classic Gaming. Have a good soul.